Here now to discuss some of the ways NCBA helps to build beef demand is Mike Miller, Senior Vice President, Global Marketing and Research. Mike, tell us a little bit more about this beef life cycle graphic and specifically why it was developed.
Well, it's a representation of the life cycle that beef goes to from pasture to plate. What we've found over the course of the last several years, any number of years, is more and more consumers have a lot of questions about how beef is produced. And frankly, our industry is complex. And so this graphic representation has proven to be a very useful tool in helping consumers, those influencers that might be engaged in the discussion, as well as even retailers and food service operators, understand how beef gets to their plate.
You mentioned it. There's so much interest in the management practices, the feed products, the protocols that we use to produce beef. How has this graphic added value for those people who really do want to know where and how their food is produced?
Well, simply people that are getting questions just want simple answers to those questions. You know, there are a lot of concerns out there. There's a lot of gaps in understanding, and so we're doing all that we can from a national standpoint to help retailers, food service operators, consumers understand how beef is raised, how it's produced, and all that goes into that. And I think what we found is that the more that we're there and answering those questions, the better off all of us are, because they just want to feel comfortable about what they're eating, what they're feeding to their family, and ultimately that's our job, is to help them get those questions answered that they have, and they tend to follow a fairly common theme, and these graphic representations like this have proven to be very useful tools in helping further that dialogue and that conversation.
It's an outstanding method. So talk to us more about how NCBA is working through the checkoff to build beef demand in other ways.
Well, we've got a whole lot of different efforts. You know, this is just one kind of representation of part of what we do. You know, we've spent a lot of time focusing on the millennial consumer. You're going to hear that over and over and over again, and that's just a younger demographic that, frankly, is part of these conversations about how beef is produced. So we're working an awful lot directly with them, trying to help inspire them, trying to be there when they're looking for, you know, dinner recipes. Well, you know, what am I going to cook tonight? We want to make sure that beef is first and foremost on their minds. We also spend an awful lot of time and a lot of efforts working with retail and food service to help them understand how dynamic and how versatile beef can be. You know, we've spent a lot of time the last several years talking about high beef prices, and so that those efforts, I think, are really going to pay dividends over the course of the next several years as the market changes a little bit. But there's a lot of different things going on, a lot of different ways that we work every day to help retailer, food service, and ultimately the consumer to hopefully eat more beef.
Choose beef.
Yes,
That's
sir.
right.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the millennial generation. I know they're huge consumers of digital media. Talk to us about how you're ramping up efforts in that area.
Well, it's been a big change for us over the last several years. You know, digital is really about being where the consumer is in real time. You know, we're kind of used to thinking of marketing as kind of pushing and promoting, and really what it's turned into is just making sure that you're there when they have questions, there when they're looking for inspiration. And that's really where our efforts are sharply focused today, is making sure that beef is there when they're looking for that inspiration. Beef is there when they've got questions about dinner time or about how beef is produced. We would just want to make sure that those questions those answers are there for those questions when they've got them, and so they feel like we're having the conversation in real time.
You mentioned high beef prices. Certainly we've been at a historic high over the last 12 to 16 months here in the beef industry. What are you doing to help producers or help consumers believe that in fact beef is worth the dollars that we're asking them to pay for it?
Well, they've certainly proven that with their pocketbook. I mean, we've seen tremendous growth in beef demand over the course of the last several years, and now we're kind of preparing for the next phase, if you will, in the cattle cycle. We're going to have more beef production. We're going to have some pressure on our markets at a time when we've got a lot of pork and a lot of chicken. So these demand building efforts, I think, are even more focused today than maybe they were 10 years ago.
Sure.
Because we really have to be there for the consumer and ultimately for our producers who pay all of our bills. So we do think that we're entering kind of a new phase here, and we're excited to be part of that conversation with consumers and hopefully getting them to enjoy more beef each and every day.
So we'd like to hear. Thank you for everything you and your team does for the industry, Mike. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Now, if you'd like a closer look at the Beef Checkoff funded effort to reach consumers, just visit the website factsaboutbeef.com.